Hi everybody, my name is Louise Wadley and I'm the director of the Hebden Bridge Film Festival, and today we have some fantastic guests. We have Marissa Begonia from The Voice of Domestic Workers. Hi Marissa.
Hi, Louise.
And we have Wragg from Leeds Animation Workshop. Hi Terry. Nice to have you here. So listen, today we are talking about the film Overseas and the film They Call Us Maids, the short domestic worker story that Leeds Animation Workshop made. But first, Marissa, I'd love to try and jump in here and see if we can get people to understand a little bit of the context. This film, when I saw it in 2019 in London, it really left a mark on me. It was haunting me, the story of how many women are being sent all over the world, having to leave their own families, their own children, to often look after other people's children. Could you tell us, do you think this was very typical, this experience we saw in the film?
Well, I'm the perfect evidence of that, and I've been through the same situation as the way I watched it today, actually. And it's a reminder of me, of my past, which is still I could see until today with my fellow domestic workers. Now it's a matter of, on my part, as mother of 3 children, to me, I just wanted for my children not to be hungry, to make sure when they are sick, they have I can pay the hospital bill, when at least a house, that is not dripping inside the house, that is not flooding. So, and also a future for my children. And I have to go through all those forms of abuse from the agency, themselves, because even the policy says, Philippines is very good in implementing laws, but actually in terms of enforcing these laws properly to ensure it protected us, it never happened. Actually, it doesn't protect, it didn't protected me, it didn't protected others. So in the agency, we have to pay a lot of money. Many of us have to loan, have to sell whatever property we have, if we have, but also if we don't have any money, like I didn't have money at the time, so I had to go through 6 months salary deduction. Even though the law says we only have to pay at least 1 month of our salary, but that's always under the table that the agencies are doing. And this is undeclared because they don't really issue receipt. So not I the role play is shocking as well, because it it's like telling us that it's okay to be abused in another country,
I think, yeah. I mean, one of the things that is really affecting in the film is watching those role plays where people are being trained, I suppose, to accept abuse, and trained not to show emotion, trained not to have a reaction if the man of the house is sexually abusive or whatever. And in your experience, do a lot of domestic workers have to deal with this?
Yes, like I think for the agency to even tell me that for Chinese people, it's bad luck to cry, and I was so painful. I was so hard, of leaving my children behind, and I was so lonely, and I had to cry, but I had to force myself not to cry, and waited until nighttime. I put the photo of my children under my pillow, and that's nighttime, it's almost midnight, you could only rest, and you're so tired, but at the same time, you always hear I always hear my children cry, and I have to cry as well in the night, But also I think it's happening because it's not just about shouting, but also the kind of, different forms of where they might pick you as well. I experienced also being, in a very dangerous situation of being sexually harassed by a male employer, and it's a place, it's a workplace, which is a home, supposed to be the safest place. Uh, but for many domestic workers, it's not. And if I scream at the time, no one could hear me. If I jump out the window because it's a very tall building, I'll die. So where shall I go? So I had to find my way to save myself from possible rape. And I was given a massage book. I said, you know what, sir, this is the best massage in the book. I read it in the book. But I was angry on how I was treated, because I only want to work so my children could eat every day, and when they're sick, they go to hospital, they can buy what they want, they can go to school properly. That's all I want. Why I had to go through with this situation of being a sex object? But the agency also never talk about this, all this danger, that we're going to face, and I wasn't prepared, but I was angry. I think the anger triggered me to fight back. But you know what, sir, this is the best massage I can. Imagine how hard was that, because I was angry. Also, I was scared. Where shall I go? So then the employee said, "Ouch, very bad." I said, "What, sir? You know what? The more pain, the more good." Then he asked me out. But when I ran outside, I'm still locked in the household. Where shall I go? So I took the knife, and then fight. I say, if you do that to me, you see this knife, I won't hesitate, because you see these horrible stories of rape, of domestic workers killing employer. It's a self-defense actually, and I was ready to fight for my life, and yeah. So I think not everyone can fight. I managed to think that way. I managed to save myself, but not everyone managed to had that courage to fight back. But
I think that's one of the things that is really clear in the film, is that you're going to another country, you're in someone else's house, you have very few rights, and so it's very, very dangerous to fight back. And to also, would I be right in assuming it would be very dangerous to leave?
To live where, and you also don't know where are you going, and the agency also have the responsibility to do that, instead of this work, they accept that this is happening and it's okay for this to happen. It's okay to overwork, and the agencies have already overworking us in the training, and let alone in another country, and at least prepare us where we should go. The contact number, that's really important, because right here in London, we're doing that. We try to give numbers in the park, we have card, and then give them the number, and we really look at them if they really need help. If the employer is looking, we try not to let the employer notice us that we are ready to help, that we're giving her something important, a contact number, that they can call. Or if somebody, I was walking in the street and psst, psst, so I do the sign number of my number, sign language, my number 7, or 0, 7, So until she get my number, and then I'm ready, because it is where they can ask help. That's the problem, because we may be managed to get out of the house, escape, the house, but where shall we go? That's another problem.
That's the next question, isn't it? So people understand that you've set up you were in this situation of domestic work. You're in a very bad situation. Could you just let us know, you set up an organization, and this is what it is, the Voice of Domestic Workers. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
So I as I'm saying, I've been to many different abusive employer as well. So, but what I found in London, because I've been in Singapore, I've been in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has a very high placement fee, that I even have to loan, in a bank, where I think it's even a fake bank, because it's kind of loan shark, that if we don't pay, we're in another country, we don't pay, they will harass my family. So sometimes I have to put up with the abuse, thinking something will happen to my family. But sometimes really I just want to fight back. There are times that I want to fight back, but I have to hold myself because of my family. But once I finish paying my loan, that's the one I start to fight back, whatever the employer is saying, he's shouting at me, he will even bang the door, always accuse me this, bring your child to the GP and let the doctors tell you that if I slap the child or whatever, they can tell you instead of accusing you. So I fight back, and I think that's really important, for domestic workers, because here in London, when I'm here, I also escaped from abusive employer who didn't pay me properly, yeah, and overwork me, also not paying the tax, and I found out everything, But also what opened my eyes is the reality that, my God, my story alone is not worse. Yeah, there are worse that rape, I've seen it in my own eyes, in rape, being poured by hot water, they're being beaten. And we also have meet, that escaping nowhere to go in London Park. She's been raped in the park because she had no place to go. And that opened my mind, my heart, that this is happening, worse than I experienced. I thought I was the worst. And that's that time I was also kind of lost, because I just escaped, and I also trying to rebuild my right. But what I found out when I came out from abusive employer, that I have rights here in the UK. And that also helped me to rebuild my life, that I was able to change my employer without problem, and I could renew my visa every year. I could, if I want to take the employer, to court, I can, if they're not paying me properly. If that employer is not good, I still leave and find another good one. That's the preventative, best prevention that we have, because I didn't even know those rights, but I found out when I managed this case, I found out everything. But what the shocking is, there were so many, and not just me, and they, when I try to help them, they're not talking, they're very quiet, they're even not writing because they couldn't understand what they are reading. So that opened my heart, and how much there's something I can do for them. But also they healed me, that I was also very down, very lonely, very shattered, that I'm starting to pick up the pieces of my shattered life, and thinking of my children all the time, that I should survive this, that one day I should be with my children, or they could be with me. And then, but that's the beginning of the voice of domestic workers. And we were called Justice for Domestic Workers at the beginning. And I would say it's not me alone. I couldn't do it alone. That was Unite the Union. There are so many individuals, supporters who help us, set up the organization. And I think give us a power, to speak out, So, because if we don't speak up, no one actually will know about what's happening behind closed doors. So the more we talk about it, the more people will know, the more people understand us. And that also slowly rebuild the life of my fellow domestic workers, that actually together we can be very strong. Yeah.
I think that's what's really powerful to me, is that even in the film, and people haven't even left yet. In the film, they're at the training agency and they're being told, okay, so you might be abused, you might be slapped, and this is what you should do, and you should not go to the police, you should go to the agency. But what is really clear, and I think the filmmaker is so clever, she shows that wonderful solidarity the women have together, and that clearly together there is this really strong bond. And I think that's what's clear to me. The voice of domestic workers has got this amazing solidarity really between you, and that even though, as you say, things can be very bad, that you can lift each other up. I wonder if I could bring Terry in here, because Terry, they call us maids, the beautiful animation at the Leeds Animation Workshop, made in 2015, I think it was, which we've chosen to show with this film. Could you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yes, well, Leeds Animation Workshop is a women's collective, and we, as well as making films about different issues, we also teach other people how to make animation, real beginners. And we were asked to do some workshops for some domestic workers in Leeds, a group, a sort of sister group of the Justice for Domestic Workers. So Marissa and one or two others would come up from London sometimes, and there are quite a lot of domestic workers in West Yorkshire who used to come along on once a month on their day off. And we noticed that even though it was their day off, they would often get a phone call from their employer saying, "Oh, the cat's been sick, you've got to come home quick and clean up," or something like that. So we realized that the one day off a week they had was often quite interrupted. And we used to have a nice time together. You know, they'd learn to do animation, but we'd also have a lot of laughing and chattering. And gradually we started to piece together the stories behind all this laughter and all these happy faces, and realized that there were some very sad stories behind all this. And also, you know, the domestic workers were making animation, but really, you know, it was their one day off, and they really wanted to sort of have a nice time and, you know, talk to their friends and, you know, have tea and cakes like everybody else. And so in the end, they said, "How about you make a film that tells our story?" I think it was you that said it, Marissa. And we said, "Yeah, we'd love to. You know, can we find anyone to pay for it?" And so Pavilion, the arts organisation that was arranging the workshops in Leeds, they managed to raise a little bit of money, enough to start us off. And we talked to all the domestic workers we'd met, and I went to London and talked to some more domestic workers. And it took, I'd say, right from when we first met, it took me about a year to actually work out what was behind all these stories. The complexities of the visa situations, the complexities of how come, and I just couldn't, it took me ages to get my head around it, because I thought that, you know, people that had a domestic worker, a maid living in the house, would just be a few rich people. It never occurred to me that actually there are thousands of women in this situation in this country alone and all over Europe. And it also took me ages to work out how come, you know, you start off in the Philippines or Africa or India, and then you go and you work in Saudi Arabia or Singapore, and then you end up here, and how come, what's behind all this? And gradually talking to everybody, we started to realize everyone had the same story. Basically, it all is the same story. And it's, you know, the reason why we've got this amazing organization of domestic workers here is because if you're working in Saudi Arabia or Singapore, but particularly Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and places like that, and you're stuck in an abusive situation, there's nowhere to escape to. You can't get out. You'd be spotted very easily, and, you know, it's quite hostile climate and everything. You wouldn't stand much of a chance. Whereas if you're in England and you've got an abusive employer, it's not so difficult to escape. It's still quite hard for a lot of women, but, you know, at some point somebody will leave the door open or at some point you'll be able to find a way out. And then there is a chance that you'll be able to do it and survive. And this is sort of really what's behind the strength of an organization like the Voice of Domestic Workers. You know, they're fantastic organization. I can't recommend enough that people try and get behind them and support them in any way that you can.
We'll make sure people know that if they just find the Facebook page or the website of the Voice of Domestic Workers, and you'll see Marissa Begonia's name around, please do support that. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think, Marissa, you were saying that the Philippines is the #1 exporter of human labor in the world. Is that correct?
Yes, because we Filipinos are scattered worldwide actually, but for the government not to do anything despite knowing that how many countries, other host countries are exploiting Filipino domestic workers. In particular, I think we are the most vulnerable group of workers, being hidden in private household and not doing anything. Example, here in the UK, how many years the UK government removed the rights of migrant domestic workers? Since 2012. So since 2012, domestic workers who came here couldn't renew their visas anymore. And they ended up undocumented. And it's so hard for us to even, we could support them, shelter them temporarily, feed them, get them clothes, because when they escape, they have no clothes. Some of them are even barefooted, As I mentioned, I have one here since December 12 that we managed to rescue. Until now, she's still here with us. And she's already undocumented because she doesn't know that the situation here in the UK. And also, even she knows, there's no way she could renew her visa because they removed the visa.
Marissa, also, isn't it true that quite often employers hold the passport so that people cannot leave?
Yes, it's true that the passport are being confiscated. It is also true that they use police to threaten them. So if you escape, police will arrest you. So whenever domestic workers see a policeman, they usually are afraid to and then they kind of avoid the police, and actually they could actually seek help from police. Especially that we have a system at the moment, we call it the National Referral Mechanism of Trafficking Law, but it doesn't really protect migrant domestic workers because they have to prove first that they are victims of this modern slavery and trafficking. But domestic workers are workers in their own right. In the absence of not allowing them to renew the visa, that's the problem. That's the main problem. It's like they manage to escape an abusive employment only to enter in a system that doesn't protect them. And this is United Kingdom, and we can do so much, to protect them, to help them change their lives, from that worst situation to that. And especially the UK government work on ending this modern slavery and trafficking, and they're claiming to be a global leader. But actually, it's not. It's worse here because UK itself is practicing this kafala system, same as the Saudi, Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, but the record of Saudi Arabia is worse. But we are here, United Kingdom, first world countries, and this is how we are treating the migrant domestic workers. I myself is a living evidence that with good policy in place, we could be saved, we could rebuild our shattered lives, and I've done that. I was protected by the overseas domestic worker visa before 2010. Those rights have protected me, and this is why the Voice of Domestic Workers is campaigning to reinstate these rights. This right to change employer, right to renew visa, right to settlement, and right to British citizenship.
Yeah, and Marissa, I just want to tell you, we're getting a few questions. So a couple of people have said, thank you so much, such an important thing that you're doing, Marissa, and the Voice of Domestic Workers. Someone has said, and I think we might have answered it, but you might want to just clarify, we've only got about 5 minutes left to go. How many people do we think are in the same position as you in the UK or England?
It's really hard for me to have that kind of data because at the moment I think the UKBA, the Home Office data, those who have the entry clearance on overseas domestic workers, I think we are on 20,000 visa entries, but we don't know how many of them stay and how many of them go back to,
Yeah.
to Philippines or to which
leave,
country
yeah.
they're coming from. And because they are brought here by the employer from different parts of the world. Yeah, so it's not just Filipino, there are Sri Lankan, there are Indians, there are Nigerians. So it's like the voice of domestic workers, we're an international community. Yeah, so the data is even home office wouldn't have that data because, you know, when we go out, there's no kind of stamp of we exited. Yeah, so.
So Marissa, if so for people who don't know, really what we're saying is that it could be easily 20,000 people in this situation, and also that for people to understand that, I guess we're talking also now about COVID. This has made the situation much, much worse, hasn't it?
Yes, yes, because at the moment, there are many of them who've been terminated since last year, yeah, the very beginning. Many of them have been terminated without pay, without notice, with so many uncertainty that whether they can still go back to the work or not. So, and the government follow also exclude domestic workers. And also, there are many of them also who have difficulties in finding a new job, you know, during this lockdown. Like I'm saying, the one we rescue is still here, 3 months now, because we are still locked down, yeah. So, but also because she's already undocumented, it is going to be hard for her as well. But, you know, people need to survive, you know, for a living. No one wants to be depending on government to support, you know. Domestic workers, given the rights, they could live on their own because they usually work on live-in position, yeah. And also they are live out also. When they live out, they also have to rent, you know. So I think the government was saying that no one is paying. They couldn't pay tax and NI because the visa itself, you know, not allowing them to renew the visa, they automatically become how can they pay tax when the system is make them undocumented? If they want to pay tax. But I think UK has to admit that they are actually facilitating the abuse and exploitation of migrant domestic workers, and that's the reality. And in terms of the Voice of Domestic Workers has set up a fund, you know, a hardship fund appeal. That's how we manage to support them so they don't be hungry, they won't be homeless. So, and we are so much grateful for all the donation, yeah, especially there are also social media influencers like Owen Jones who tweeted because we ran out of that, then suddenly Owen Jones tweeted oh my God, it's like we have more than 80, we managed to support more than 80 and we still continue. I think the worst thing between December, January, many of them have been infected by the COVID itself because they are being forced to look after COVID family. And some of them, they're happy to find a job. They found a job. And then when they arrive, the family has COVID and without even telling them the truth.
Yeah.
You know, so and because they are undocumented, you know, they need to earn money, they need to send money to their family who are also suffering from this pandemic, you know, the pandemic is global. So what we're saying is the more the workers are vulnerable, the more protection and rights they should have. But the government, the UK government is doing the same. It's like the Philippine government is not doing anything, you know. Have they talked to the UK government to kind of discuss the problem that the Filipino domestic workers are facing, that they are all because no, I never heard them. Yeah, I received like a presidential award. I don't need that award.
Yeah, yeah. You
I
know,
want them to do the right thing for migrant domestic workers.
Yeah, Marissa, I cannot say enough how much we're delighted to have you able to give us your perspective from exactly what we've been watching. And this film was set obviously in the Philippines for workers to go all over the world. And it's interesting, Terry, that you said, you know, that you imagined it was only super rich people, but actually there's just thousands and thousands of people in the same situation. We're going to have to wrap it up, but I would like to just finish by saying thank you so much to our guest, Terry Wragg from the Leeds Animation Workshop. Still going, and if people want to look, website, Terry, is that the way to go?
Yes, and if you'd like to borrow our film or get a copy of our film, They Call Us Maids, the domestic workers story, it's available from us. And you know, if you can use it to help raise funds for the hardship fund, we'll give you a massive discount.
Fantastic.
Because it does tell the story in 7 minutes, you know, the story that it took us all those, you know, all that year to find out, it has been condensed through the magic of animation into 7 minutes.
Yeah, and it's wonderful because it's so elegant. It's such an elegant way of telling the story, isn't it? And thank you to you, Marissa, for taking the time out and for letting us have the benefit of all your knowledge and experience. And thank goodness you and the other workers have found each other and formed this organisation. And once again, we will put it up on the page, but the Voice of Domestic Workers, go to the website, donate if you want to. And just thank you very much, both of you, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. Thank you to all the audience. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.